you can count on. And Baylor President and part of the Transformational Committee, she was the ran it, the chairwoman of it, is Dr. Linda Livingstone of Baylor University, with us now on 365 Sports. Thank you for your time. I know it's been a busy time for you in San Antonio, among others. Do you get the feeling that anytime someone in any athletics, in college athletics or whatever, brings in the mix of that in Congress, that people really just don't like to hear that? And your thoughts about that?
Well, hey, David, it's good to be with you today. It's been a really, really busy week, but a good week. You know, I get that people kind of go, why in the world would you go to Congress to try to get help? Who would want to do that? And why would you ask for that? But, you know, I think if people sort of understood on the level those of us who deal with this every single day do, the complexities and the interplay that we're trying to deal with court cases, with state laws, with potential regulations related to some of the government regulatory agencies. These aren't simple issues, and they're ones that are extremely hard to navigate. And as much as we would like to be able to always have solutions that we can put in place ourselves, some of this is complicated in a way it makes it hard for us to do what we believe we need to do. And frankly, some of the things people wish we would do without some collaboration with Congress. So, you know, I understand why people ask that question, and I understand the skepticism over it. And it's certainly not the first path anybody would choose to take. But sometimes your options become pretty limited, and you have to go down paths that are ultimately in the best interest of what we're trying to accomplish, but maybe not where we would have started if we'd wanted to.
Well, you know, this you're talking about schools in all 50 states here, so you've got intrastate issues and all that you have to deal with. So that's what Congress is supposed to do. But on the practical side of it, how soon can you expect Congress to respond to your request? Because this feels like a bit of an uphill battle to get them to even entertain this, given how it works right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a very good point. And, you know, we believe that this congressional session that runs from now really through the summer is probably the window where we will have the most opportunity, and frankly, really need to make some progress if we can. I do have to say that, you know, we have over 1,100 schools in the NCAA. Every person in Congress probably either went to one of those schools, has one of those schools in their district, or certainly in their state, and they certainly all have supporters that went to all of these schools. So it should be something of great national interest, and that with the right grassroots effort, we can have lots of contact with all of the folks in Congress. And then, of course, you know, college sports is a kind of a national pastime, and people love it and should care a lot about its sustainability and success for the future. So we hope that some of those things will help us, you know, move some things forward. And it really, as we certainly are all aware, is a pretty challenging time in Washington, D.C. right now.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but if the NCAA had done things better before the Transformation Committee or other things they've done recently, and you've been a part of both the Board of Governors, et cetera, would they be in this position to be asking Congress?
Well, I think it's kind of easy now to look back and say, oh, gosh, I wish we'd done this, or I wish we'd done that. I do think there are some probably significant points in time, probably over even a 10-year period of time, where if different choices had been made, we might be in a somewhat different place now. I don't know if it would be completely different, but, you know, as much as you wish you could go back and change what had or hadn't been done in the past, we certainly don't have that magic wand to do it. And so we have to deal with what we have now and really do our best to be responsive and proactive going forward to try to address the challenges that we face.
Is one of the things you need them to legislate on what specifically constitutes a college athlete, and then perhaps give an option if you want to be a college athlete, here are the benefits and things that are available to you, but if not, then you can certainly bypass that and not be part of it. I think the push towards, like you said, employment is the big one from the crowd right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the challenge, what we would like, one of the things we would like Congress to consider is some kind of a special status for college athletes, so that they would not be considered employees. And there are some models out there where people engage people engage in ways where they get some benefit, some level of benefit without being fully considered employees. Because, at the end of the day, what our student athletes do as athletes, we view as part of the education and learning experience and not something you do as an employee. And there are certain benefits our student athletes have because they're students and are not employees, and things we do for them that frankly you probably couldn't continue to do for them if they become employees. And I think the other thing we struggle some with is why you would consider a scholarship student athlete that's engaged in activities on behalf of the university any different than our scholarship musicians or scholarship other students that are engaged in activities on behalf of the university that are, have certainly regional, national visibility and have an impact on the reputation of the university. So I understand completely, people's questions about, well, why don't you just make them employees? But if you really drill into details of what it means to be an employee and what that means the expectations are, I think it means our coaches become bosses and supervisors instead of educators and teachers and mentors like we really want them to be. And then there's a whole set of issues that cascade from that frankly is probably not in the best interest of our student athletes. Now, do we need to continue to say what ways do we need to continue to think about enhancing the benefits for our student athletes, which certainly you see a lot of that in the Transformation Committee work? Do we need to continue to evaluate what's the right economic model for college athletics, particularly for our revenue-generating sports, that might be different than it is now, that works for our universities and our student athletes? Absolutely, we need to do that. There's certainly an area that we're putting a lot of time and energy into, but being employees is not what most folks involved in college athletics really think is what's in the best interest of kind of the long-term health of college athletics, or certainly even our student athletes.
That was going to be one of my follow-ups is, so do you believe that there is potential for synergy between those two things of, making, like genuine, standards and, a structure for student athletes while also not going back to the old way where it was, this way and there's no room for growth or change?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you've seen that. We're doing, full cost of attendance. Most of the Autonomy 5 and certainly some other schools in Division I are doing full cost of attendance payments to student athletes, where many institutions, certainly among the Autonomy 5 and others, are doing some additional supplemental educational benefits now above and beyond scholarships and room and board. And so those have been really significant changes in recent years. And I think those are the kinds of things we have to continue to look at is, are there other ways we need to think about that could build on what we've already done and continue to support our athletes in the right ways going forward and maybe in more significant ways.
Dr. Livingstone, you used the word imminent as far as college athletics. What do you mean imminent?
Well, if you look at what's going on out there, several lawsuits that are pending that could have significant implications across college athletics. There are some state laws that are pending that could have implications. There are regulatory agencies of the federal government that are looking at some potential issues. And now legal cases obviously take much longer to get through the system and certainly, in some ways don't have as immediate of an impact, but they certainly could over the longer run. But some of these others are shorter term. And so we really have to pay a lot of attention to that and work on how we address those issues depending on what happens in some regulatory agencies at the state level while we continue to work on a broader strategy, both internally within the NCAA, but then hopefully in partnership with Congress. I think the other thing that's really important here that I don't know that folks always think about is most of the legal cases, state laws, and so on have not been focused on only one division or those institutions that do generate the most revenue, even though those are the ones that are the most high profile and frankly have raised a lot of the questions and concerns that are out there. But for instance, an employment model, it would be hard to understand how you can have an employment model for, a Baylor football player, and how is that different than a football player in a D3 school? They're doing the same work, they're playing the same game, they're practicing. And so a lot of these issues, and I don't think people understand, could have far-reaching effects all the way through Division I and into Divisions 2 and 3, and which could be really devastating for some of the institutions in this country that, are playing sports at a different level than we do at Baylor, but it's still great for those student athletes, great for their communities and their universities. And we have to be really thoughtful and conscientious of that as we address these issues, because it's not all about the Autonomy 5 or the Division I school.
You mentioned that the representatives or those senators, whoever, have their own alma maters. Have you had any discussions whatsoever with anyone that may be a part of Congress that might be a part of perhaps the future in trying to figure all this out? Has there been any even show of interest on their part?
There are folks both in the Senate and in the House that over, the last couple of years have actually, there's several bills in that have sort of been out there for a couple of years at the Senate level, and then at the House level that and there have been lots of conversations about what's in those, what they look like, what are the things about those that make sense, what are the things about those that are challenging. So, there is interest, and there's places to start, and certainly the work of the Transformation Committee and the holistic student-athlete model that you see in that is a very important part of that, because much of what you see in the holistic student-athlete model in some ways parallels a number of the things that you see in some of those legislative proposed bills that are out there, not because they were in those bills necessarily, because we think they're the right things to do for student athletes. So there's certainly been work done to talk to those folks that have the highest level of interest, but there's a lot more work to do, and frankly, it's got to be expanded to a broader set of folks on Capitol Hill in the coming months.
Is that what Charlie Baker's one of his big draws is as the new president, is his connection to that world?
Well, certainly his political skill, being a Republican governor from a Democratic state and being extremely popular governor, and then getting big things done certainly played into that, because he's lived in that world. But he also, even as a business leader before he became governor, took on really complex problems, solved complex problems. He loves doing that. It kind of energizes him. He also loves students and young people and values higher education, athletics a lot. So it's just kind of that combination of things, but absolutely his political skill and really the skill to listen, hear what people really need, and bring collaborative solutions to problems that really try to address the issues of people on multiple sides of issues. And so he's great. We are thrilled to have him joining us. He was at the conference at the convention this week, and he's going to be a wonderful person to lead the NCAA forward, and it's really going to be significant in helping us work through these issues.
Dr. Livingstone, last question. We do appreciate your time today. Do you feel like that the Congress will actually sit down and talk with you?
Yeah, I think they will. Now, it's hard to know where that will get us in the long run, and how much of what we want we will get. But I do think there are people that want to sit down with us. They care a lot about these issues. And even in the midst of kind of a challenging time in Washington, I do believe we'll get an audience with folks to have these conversations. And then hopefully we'll be able to build a strong enough coalition across both branches or both houses to really be able to get some things accomplished as we go through this year.
Thank you very much for your time. I know it's been a long week and also a busy week at the convention in San Antonio. Thank you very much, Dr. Livingstone.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Appreciate the opportunity to visit.
As always, thank you. Thanks to Jason Cook, Baylor University, for helping to set that up. The annual convention was Thursday.